In this movie, I'm going to talk about the basic notation of object diagrams and show you how to produce them. We'll look at the notation for objects, how objects are named in diagrams and the various options there are, and the notation for links between objects. Objects are real-world things or objects that exist at runtime. The simplest notation for an object, as for a class, is just a rectangle with the name of the object at the top. The name is underlined, which helps to distinguish it from a class. When we're analysing things in the real-world problem domain, we can use the names of those things in that real world, as here where we have 3 people and a book. The names of objects can be represented in various ways, depending on what we know about the object, but the name is always underlined. It can just be the name of the object, it can be the name of the object followed by the classifier, usually a class name if we know what class the object belongs to. If we show both, we separate them with a colon. The name that's displayed can also just be the name of the classifier or class. If we show this, we put a colon in front of it, which helps to distinguish the object from a class. Or we can just show a colon if we don't have a name for the object and don't know what class it belongs to. If we're working with objects that will exist at runtime, the names that we assign to them are more likely to be the kind of names that you would use for variables in a programming language. In this case, an example of the unnamed object with no class, the colon on its own, might be an anonymous inner class used to provide a callback in GUI programming. Links between objects are shown as lines. The links represent instances of the associations or aggregation or composition relationships in the class diagram, in the same way as objects represent instances of classes. A link may have a name, or it may have role names at the ends defining the roles that the instances play in the system, which could be variable names if you're modeling runtime objects. The links may be directed, reflecting navigability from one object to another. This shows that an object has a reference to another object and can invoke its operations depending on their visibility. Now let's have a look at how to create object diagrams and add objects and links. Here's the model that we've added classes to. Now we're going to add an object diagram. Let's create a new package for this in the class view. We'll call it objects. So I right-click on class view and select Add a Package. I give it the name Objects. I make sure that the checkbox for Create Diagram is selected. The new diagram dialog opens. I'm going to add a UML object diagram, which is a UML structural model. So UML structural is selected, and on the right-hand side, I select Object. I open the diagram. There are various ways that I can add objects to this diagram. First is to create an object from the toolbox, so I'll do that. I click on Object in the toolbox, and then click on the diagram. It adds a new object. I'm going to call it Schedule. I'll zoom into that so it's clearer. You can see that the name is underlined. This is how you would work if you were adding objects to a diagram but don't know yet what class they belong to as part of an analysis exercise. However, I've already got some classes in my system, and I've got an object here which doesn't say what class it belongs to. So I need to assign it into a class. I right-click on the object and select Advanced and then Instance Classifier. Now this is how you would do it in Enterprise Architect. Other tools may be different. I can now browse through the model to select the Schedule class, and then I click OK. You can see that it's now put the class name after the colon in the object. Another way of adding an object is to drag the class it belongs to into the diagram from the project browser. In the project browser, I find the timed event class, and I drag that into the diagram. It comes up with the dialog box, which we've seen before. If I was adding it as a class, then I would select Link from the drop-down list. However, I'm adding an instance or an object, so I select Instance Object. This time, I've got an object that belongs to the class timed event, but it doesn't have a name as an object. You can see that from the colon before the class name. If I want to give it a name, I can go to the Properties dialog and type one in. But I want to leave this timed event as anonymous, so I'll just click OK there. I'll add another timed event, and I can just drag in from the project browser again. The next step is to add a link between the schedule and the timed events. I can do that from the object relationships in the toolbox. The one I want is the one called Associate. I select the icon, then click and hold on Schedule and drag to one of the timed events. I can also do this using the quick linker. I select Schedule, then click on the little arrow at the top right, hold and drag down to the other timed event. This time I'm going to select a directed link. You'll see that it has an arrowhead on it. I can change the other link to be directed as well. To do that, I select it, right-click and select Advanced, Change Direction, and then Source to Destination. Now, I'm going to give these links a name and set the role name at the schedule end of the links. I right-click on the association and select Properties, or double-click on the association. I'm going to give this the name Contains, and then I go to the Roles page, and at the source end for Schedule, I'm just going to give it the name Schedule. I'll do the same for the other one. Okay, so now we've created an object diagram with 3 object instances on it and links between them.